Greetings. I wanted to take a few moments and give you a quick overview of prevention credentials. My name is Jennifer Benson, and I am an Ohio Certified Prevention Consultant and working with the OCAM network to help people gain credentials and gain knowledge that they need to further the prevention field. So in that end, we are going to talk a little bit about the prevention credentials and just a general idea of what it is and what you need to do. The objectives for this quick webinar are to find out what the Ohio prevention credentials are, why you should get credentialed, and then how to get credentialed. This webinar is just meant as an overview, so as we go through to the end of this, you will see that it might benefit you to contact someone directly to get a little bit more information on how to actually do the credentials. So to start out, the credentials are through the Ohio Chemical Dependency Board. They also do credentials for chemical dependency recovery and treatment folks. There are basically 4 credentials. The first one is an introductory level, and then there are 3 subsequent levels. And getting these credentials will bring some legitimacy to the field. It helps people know that we're not just making things up, that we actually have some science behind it. And if you get your credentials, it'll help you understand the scope of practice. In other words, the things that different prevention credentialed people can do at different levels. So in brief, the different credentials are as follows. The first one is kind of that introductory level. It's the registered applicant, or RA, as you might hear me say later. That is where you fill out a paper, and I'll show you in just a second, that says, I intend to get a credential, and this is how I intend to do it. So it'll be creating a professional development plan, shows what you're going to do. The other 3 are the credentials, and with the registered applicant, you can only be in that credential for 2 years. The other 3 are ones that you would move toward. So the first one is the Ohio Certified Prevention Specialist Assistant. So that is for folks who are maybe new to the field, don't have a lot of experience or education, or maybe even some community members. The next is the Ohio Certified Prevention Specialist. So more time in the field, more education. And then finally, the Ohio Certified Prevention Consultant. That is someone who has been in the field for a while, has a lot of education, and if you look at the scope of practice, they are someone who can do more prevention activities. So people ask all the time, why should I get credentialed? What's the whole purpose behind it? Well, if you're a community member or coalition member, it kind of helps that coalition gain some funding. There are going to be times where there is funding only available to people who are credentialed. And it'll also help some of those coalition and community members better understand prevention. Therefore, they'll be better able to support it in the future. If you do prevention work, it's important to get it because a lot of prevention programming requires that the presenter or the facilitator of the education be credentialed in some way. Again, that prevention funding often requires credentials. You're also better able to advocate for effective prevention because we all know that there's a lot of prevention out there that's not as effective. And it'll also get you under that scope of practice so that you can be legitimate in your position and you can know what things you can and can't do. Let's say if you're credentialed in another discipline. I've had a lot of people say, well, I already have an LISW. Why should I get the prevention credentials? Again, a lot of prevention program requires that you be prevention credentialed. Again, a lot of funding often requires those credentials. It also helps people understand the difference between prevention and say treatment or counseling. And finally, again, being under that scope of practice for prevention, a little bit different than some of those other disciplines. So now that we kind of have that brief overview of what they are and why you should get them, I'm going to go a little bit more into how do you get the credentials. Step 1, become a registered applicant. So why do you need to do that? Again, that's the initial credential. That's that first thing you should do. As soon as you get that, it will put you under that scope of practice. And it also helps people realize what it is that you want to accomplish. So how you do it is you will create a professional development plan. Really want you to think about what things that you want in your career and what kinds of education and experience you're going to need to get that. Think about what you want to accomplish. You're going to have to create an account on eLicense. If you have another credential, you may already have an account there, but you will. But that's one of the first steps you'll have to do if you don't have anything. And you'll upload the professional development plan for approval. So let me show you what that plan looks like. This is just a sample. This is not what yours has to look like. It's just what I put together. So the professional development plan is basically going to be saying, these are the educational things and the experience things that I want to do to be able to get to my goal. So you have 6 different domains, different areas in which they want you to have some experience in. Each of those domains has education and experience with it. So like if we look at the first one, planning and evaluation. Maybe for your education, maybe you already took a college course in evaluation. And then maybe you're going to do a CADCA training and maybe a training from Prevention First. So those are the things that you plan to do to get that education in planning and evaluation. And how do you want to get your experience? Well, maybe you can work with your supervisor to complete evaluation reports for maybe 3 of your current grants, or maybe you already do that, and so you can just say that I will continue to work on the evaluation reports for, DFC or whatever grant you might do. So for domain 2, the prevention education, maybe you are looking ahead and these are some trainings that you're planning on doing. So, put those on there. And maybe your experience is that you're going to work with some more experienced coworkers. Maybe if you're doing life skills, you're going to work with someone who's been doing it for a while and find out what they do and how they do it, and kind of gives you that experience. If you look at like communication, maybe you've got a college course in speech and communication. That would be perfect. Maybe for your experience, maybe your agency has social media and you're going to work on some prevention messages. You're going to look up maybe what some of the best prevention messages are for social media, and you'll create those. Community organization, maybe you've done some training through CADCA. And maybe for the experience, you're going to attend community coalition meetings. For public policy and environmental change, college course in policy creation. I don't know what kind of courses you've had, but maybe you've had one that would do that. And then the experience piece could be attending city council meetings and advocating for prevention, and maybe advocating for some policies or some laws that might help with prevention. And then maybe you want to conduct an environmental scan with your youth coalition. So those are some things that might fit in with that one. The last one, professional growth and responsibility, is kind of that, how do you want to expand in your own personal growth within the field? So maybe you're going to seek out trainings in professional development, drug trends, and maybe you want to be a supervisor at some point, so you put supervision there. And maybe your experience would be working with coworkers to learn various different aspects of prevention work. because you do one type, but you want to learn about some others. That is, in a nutshell, what you have to do for your professional development plan. So you will then turn that in, and that will become the first step, waiting to see if you can get approved for that. While you are waiting for that, you have to then prepare for step 2. So in preparing, you need to get an unofficial transcript of your college, or any college classes you might have taken, any certificates to workshops you've done, any kind of training that you've done, if it's online or if it's in person. Gather all those certificates. Make sure that you have the right supervisor, and I'm going to show you those here in a minute. But the person who supervises your prevention work needs to have a certain credential themselves. So that does not have to be the person who signed your check, but I'll show you those in just a second. And then you need to figure out which credential that you're going to be applying for. And I'm going to show you a flow chart that'll help you figure that one out. So as you gather your certificates, there are some things I want you to just notice. In these circles here, you will see where these might say P2, P2, P7. Those have been approved for clock hours through the Ohio Chemical Dependency Board. And if it says P2, if you remember back, let's go back real quick. P2 was Domain 2, Prevention, Education, and Service Delivery. So it is approved for, this first one, 10.75 hours in P2. So you know that certificate for that training that you went to has that approval. So as you look at your certificates, these are the things you can do. You don't have to guess where it goes. You know exactly where it goes. Here's those supervisory requirements I told you about. So if you are going for an RA or an OCPSA, you need to have one of these people be your supervisor. If you are going for an Ohio Certified Prevention Specialist, one of those. And if you are Ohio, you won't be already an Ohio Certified Prevention Consultant, but if you become that, then you don't have any supervision required. But because you are not initially starting off at that, you will need something of the others. So this can be confusing, but we're going to try to go through this slowly and deliberately. Which credential should you apply for? So all credentials require that you at least have your high school diploma and be 18 years old. That can be a GED, that can be, high school equivalency, but you need to at least have that and be 18. So after that, the next question you would ask is, do you have any college courses? If the answer is no, then you ask, have you done at least 100 hours of prevention work, paid or volunteer? And there's a lot of things that can go into that. That can be attending your local coalition meetings. That can be, going to programming in the schools, or doing some information dissemination at a health fair. There's a lot of things that can fit into that. So have you done those 100 hours? If the answer is no there, then you just really need to wait until you have a little more experience before you move on from the RA. And you can have that RA for 2 years. So in 2 years, that should not be a problem. Well, let's say that, yes, you do have 100 hours of prevention work. Then do you have at least 45 hours of some kind of education, half of which needs to be in the last 5 years? So if you say, if you say no to that, then you need to wait until you have a little more education. If you say yes, then your OCPSA would be the best option for you. Let's go back up. Let's see if you have any college courses. If the answer is yes, then we're going to find out how much college do you have. If you have an associate's, Then you need to look at, have you done at least 2,000 hours of prevention work, paid or volunteer? That's about a year. Could be longer depending on how much you actually do. If the answer is no, then you go back to the other loop. If the answer is yes, that you do have those 2,000 hours, then you need to know, do you have at least 120 hours of education? And that's prevention education, 60 of which is in the last year, 5 years, sorry. If the answer is no, then again, go back to the loop. Do you have at least 45? If you have at least 45, then you would do the OCPSA. If you have at least 120, then the OCPS would be your best option. Going back up to how much college do you have? Let's say you have a bachelor's degree or higher. Then we need to find out, have you done at least 6,000 hours of paid prevention work? Again, that's about 3 or 4 years, depending on how much work you do. And this one is all paid prevention work. It's not volunteer. If no, then go back over to the 2,000 hours and work that loop. If the answer is yes, then the next question is, do you have at least 120 hours of education? 60 of which would be in the last 5 years. If the answer is no, then again, go back to that first box and do you have at least 45 hours? But let's say the answer is yes. So you've got 6,000 hours of work, 120 hours of education. Do you have at least 90 hours of administrative or supervisory education? And I'll tell you how you can find that out. If the answer is no, then the OCPS would be the best. But if the answer is yes, then the OCPC would be the best option. I'm going to leave this here for just a minute if you want to make a screenshot of this. You can go through it on your own again to see where you might fall. And again, you can watch these over and over again. So now that you've kind of looked at that, we need to figure out what each of those education areas mean. So there is a list on the Ohio Chemical Dependency Board website. It's Prevention Education Definitions. You can download that list so that you can look to see what fits in those. So if they don't have that little like P2, P3, you can look to see where a training that you've done might fit. Highly encourage you to keep agendas or syllabi or objective lists, whatever you can find for the trainings that you've been to. Just kind of stick them with the certificates. That way, if there's any question, you can prove that. And also you can use this list when, let's say you realize that you need more hours in the communication section. You can use this list to look at trainings and say, hey, would that fit in there? So I encourage you to download that list of definitions. So step 2, we've prepared for step 2. Now this is step 2. After you figured out which one of those credentials you're going to apply for, you get this grid. And it's 3 pages. Well, it's actually 4 pages. First is an explanation, and then the grid is on the following 3 pages. And it probably will look kind of similar to the professional development plan, because this is the same content areas. So once you've gathered all your certificates and all your transcripts, you're going to then take the course, put it into the proper domain, proper content area, and fill out each section. If you look for, this is for the OCPSA, there's 3 hours required for P1, 3 hours for P2, 3 hours for P3. If you add up all the hours, they're not going to equal the 45. They just want a minimum of that in each one so that they know that you are well-rounded and you know about different areas of prevention. So a little advice on completing those grids, even if it's for the OCPS or the OCPC. If your course was a college course and it was a semester class, and let's say you earned 3 credit hours, then that equals 45 clock hours. So they say a semester is 15 hours, and that would be 3 times 15 weeks is 45 clock hours. If the course was a quarter class and you earned 3 credit hours, then that equals 30 clock hours, 3 times 10 weeks. So when you're filling out those grids, if it's, if you're using a college course for, say, the communications section, you really would have a total of 45 or 30 hours. If you want, that next section, they're splitting the hours. If you want to split them, let's say it was a class on communication and policy change, just an example, then you can split it between those 2 areas. If you have the syllabus, that would be the best way to show how it can be split. But if not, that's something you can work on later. If it's not approved through the board, that's the Ohio Chemical Dependency Professionals Board, you can use it still sometimes. You'll have to be real specific on the content areas and whether it fits in there. So step 3, complete all the additional forms. When you go on to the Ohio Chemical Dependency Board page and go down through the prevention, different types of credentials, you'll see a couple different extra forms that you have to fill out. There's a form about your supervisor has to sign. Again, remember back the supervisory requirements. So they'll be signing that basically, yes, you've done this experience, and I don't think there's anything that you've done that's been inappropriate. Scan everything in. So that's something you can start right from the beginning. Start scanning in all your certificates, all the forms that have been signed. Make sure that everything is signed and has your name on it. And then you're going to have to request official transcripts, and they need to be emailed to the board at that email there. That is on the very bottom page of the board website. So if you don't get it copied down, it is there. So that supervisor reference form I was saying, again, that supervisor does not need to be the person who signs your check. Let's say you don't have a supervisor that has those needed credentials. Try some other places. Try the coalition. Try maybe a board member. If nobody there has it, see if you can find another prevention professional that would be willing to either contract with you to be that supervisor or can help fit you with someone. The supervisor form needs to be filled out by the supervisor. Do not fill it out for them, and make sure that they complete and sign all of it. Now to step 4, sign into eLicense. Select apply for a new license because you've already signed in once to do the RA. So you're just applying for a new license. Complete all the steps, including uploading all the digital files, and then you will pay and submit your application. Step 5, you're going to wait your approval. So, continue on what you're doing. You already have your RA, so you can continue to do your prevention work, continue to do more trainings, just await for that approval. It can take up to 5 weeks for that approval to come through. Sometimes it may be a little bit more, so don't get discouraged. If you applied for the OCPS-A, you'll just simply receive notification that you were approved. Yay, you can celebrate, dance, whatever. If you apply for the OCPS or OCPC, you'll receive notification that you're approved to take the test because those credentials do require a test. Well, what if you aren't approved? What if you get it sent back to you? Don't freak out. A lot of applications are returned because, you may have forgotten something. You may have not turned in one page. You may have put things on different places. Don't get discouraged. Just go ahead and send that extra stuff or correct whatever you need to and send it back in. If you are completely not approved, make sure you've got the correct credential that you're applying for. Maybe you thought you had enough education, but you really don't, you need to do a different one. And if you really don't understand why you weren't approved, contact the board. They're there to help us and to support us in our work. So ask them, hey, why was this not? Is there something I can do that would improve my chances or fix this problem? Okay, so if you are approved for the OCPSA, print out that certificate. If you have to for your job, turn in a copy of it to your supervisor so they've got it in your personnel file. And then every 2 years, you have to have education to continue to maintain that. So make sure you get your continuing education, take your 3-hour ethics every 2 years. And then I would strongly encourage you to begin working on the next level of credential. It really is, it's good to continue to move up that ladder. So step 6, if you're approved to take the credentialing test, you need to begin studying. And I'm going to show you some resources here in just a second. In the email, you will get a list of local testing sites. So go ahead and register at one. And then this website here is a website where you can take the practice test. So again, I'm going to give you a second to take a screenshot if you want. If you're younger, you might be more used to taking tests online. If you're older, like myself, you may not feel as comfortable. So if nothing else, this will help you get that comfort level of taking a test online. There are other practice tests. The other ones that I know of do charge for them. This one is a free one. Here are some study resources. Go ahead and take a screenshot if you want. You can use these actual websites, but for me, I personally just Google them because I can never remember to put everything in from the website. But Rhode Island is another state that has a really good credentialing program, and they have this study guide. It does have a practice test in the back. It's online, but if you want to print it out, it's a lot of pages, but it is really good. Also, highly recommend that you read through the CADCA primers. I would encourage you to maybe take one a week and read through it, really get to know it, understand it, and then move on to the next one. And then finally, there's also the candidate guide for the ICRC Prevention Specialist Examination. It's another study guide like that first one. So take a screenshot of this. You can Google those. So let's say you're ready for the test day. Make sure you follow all the rules for testing. They may say you're not allowed to bring in your phone, you're not allowed to bring in a purse. Just make sure that you follow all those rules because you don't want a problem to come just because you did something like accidentally had your phone in your pocket. Take a deep breath. Focus. It's not as daunting as some people may say it is. There's really going to be at least one, if not two answers. It's all multiple choice. So there's really going to be one or two answers where you're going to think that's definitely not it. So just make sure you take your time, read all the options. And then when you get to the end of the computer test, you'll get a provisional pass or fail. It'll say, looks like you've passed, looks like you failed. They go through and they make it official later. But, I haven't heard of anybody, and I'm sure that there are people, but I haven't heard of anybody that had that provisional pass or fail at the end be wrong. So the nice thing is you'll find out right away. So if you are approved and you pass the test, again, print out your certificate. If you're required, turn in a copy to your supervisor. And again, ensure to get all continuing education. And save all those certificates. So just some final thoughts here. Make sure you're following the scope of practice of the Code of Ethics. And if you take an ethics class, you should be able to have all of those. Make sure you maintain your credentials. Don't let them lapse because you forgot to take something. It's not that hard to do, and you should be able to get that completed every 2 years. Try to get it done within the first year so that if there are any problems, you've got a whole other year to worry about. If there's a time when you feel like, I need to go inactive for whatever reason, I'm stopped working in prevention, or I'm taking a hiatus from work, you can put your credentials on an inactive status, and your clock basically stops during that time. So, if you need to do that, contact the board. Don't let your credentials slip just because of that. And please help us advocate for others in prevention to pursue their credentials. We want as many people as possible to become part of our credentialed profession. And the more we advocate for that, the better. So hopefully this gave you a quick overview. I know it wasn't completely step-by-step, but it was, just a quick overview. If you have further questions, you can contact me. Again, my name is Jennifer Benson, and my email is Jennifer, Jennifer, D. Benson, Benson, so Jennifer D. Benson @gmail.com. Just say, hey, I want to know a little bit more about the credentials. I will be happy to walk you through it. Thank you, and have a fabulous day.